everybody, Tekking here, and in this video we're going to be discussing Ichigo's Quincy powers. Yeah, he does have Quincy powers. I mean, he only used them the one time, but who knows what the future will bring. But before we get to the future of the series, I feel like we need to go back to the past a little bit. We need to see one particular scene that people love to cite whenever you're talking about Ichigo's Quincy powers, and I think I just need to discuss this really quick. So, let me just cue this up here. Okay. Alright, so this is where we are in the manga right now. Let me just rewind this a little bit here, and, no, that's not far enough. Okay, hold on a tick. Like a full bring shit. Alright, okay, here we go, right here. Alright, so when Ichigo performed the final Getsuga Tensho, and then subsequently used Mugetsu to defeat Aizen at the end of the Fate Karakura arc, a lot of people, even back then, were hypositing maybe Ichigo has Quincy powers. Now, this is right off the cuff from when Aizen basically told him, like, you are the son of a Shinigami, and then he trails off, and then Isshin arrives, and that kind of drowns out the sound of what he was going to say. So, people were hypositing, like, oh, alright, so Masaki was maybe something relevant that Aizen was going to say, and then he goes into this form, which grants him immense power, but it's a one and done, and then after you use it, your power disappears. Well, that sounds a lot like Uryu's Let's Steal that he used during the Soul Society arc. So even before the whole backstory with Masaki, even before we knew the final arc was going to be about Quincy's, there were people hypositing that Ichigo's mother was a Quincy and he has Quincy powers. Now, that's a really clever way to look at it. That's like, wow, that's cool. Maybe Kubo's dropping hints. I still have a few problems with that scene. I would really consider it a Deus Ex Machina, but I'm not going to get into my problems with it. I'm just going to get into the issue that I don't think this is going to be a foreshadowing to Ichigo's Quincy powers, at least not in the way that you're thinking. And the main problem with that is that Isshin was the one that taught it to him, and Isshin even hinted that his Zanpakuto had a similar technique that he didn't want to teach Isshin to begin with. See, because that's the whole reason Ichigo learned about it. You know, Isshin's like, I need to teach you the final Getsuga. And that's why I think it was a Deus Ex Machina. Like I said, I really don't want to get into it, but I just want to bring up how annoying that was. It's like this ultimate fight against Aizen. Oh man, what's Ichigo gonna do? He doesn't even stand a chance. And then like less than 20 chapters before Aizen gets defeated, Isshin breaks out this technique that we've never heard of before, didn't even know was feasible, and then Ichigo masters it, and he uses it, and he wins. And just, whatever. Anyway, yeah. So, if it's a Quincy-based technique, if it's a technique that Ichigo would only be able to learn because of his Quincy heritage, then how the hell would Isshin have a similar technique? Now, when Isshin talked about it, he was like, you know, my Engetsu was the same way. It didn't want to teach him the final Getsuga. Now, remember, Getsuga Tensho, that's a technique that Isshin originally had. That's his technique, and the reason Ichigo has it is because Isshin is his dad, so because he's a pure-blood Shinigami, I'm assuming that the power was passed down, and it just kind of like transferred over to Ichigo, you know, and Isshin's Getsuga Tensho, granted, is a little bit different from Ichigo's. His is more fire-based because that's what his Engetsu is, but yeah, so apparently Engetsu has a similar technique to Ichigo's, and maybe Isshin just, he tried to get Engetsu to teach him, and Engetsu never taught him, and that's why he still has his Shinigami powers, but the ability does exist in Engetsu, which Isshin has nothing to do with Quincy's. Isshin is part of the Shiba clan, he's 100% Shinigami, so the whole idea where it's like Ichigo can only use Final Getsuga and then lose his powers because of his Quincy heritage, it's kind of like Let's Steal. It's that kind of punches a pretty damn big hole in it, I would say. So I just wanted to address that right off the bat, but when we come into the revelation that, alright, so Ichigo is a Quincy, his mother was a Quincy, Yuha told him this during the first invasion, his Quincy power was properly awoken whenever Ichigo was trapped in Kurhei's jail. He was trapped in this spherical jail where he could not escape, even like all his powerful techniques like Getsuga Tensho wouldn't work, and he's just pounding at this jail, and what's happening is his Ryatsu is emanating out of him, hitting the barrier of the border of the jail, and it's getting bounced back into him. So his own Ryatsu is like, it's like inside of a giant bell. It's like ringing and resonating with him again and again and again. And the way Yuha spoke about it is that eventually throughout this process, his own Ryatsu began to like stir up inside himself, and then he realized like the Quincy powers got brought to the surface essentially. And since Quincy powers could not be stopped by Kurhei's jail, that's how he was able to break out and arrive on the battlefield. Now at this point, even though his Quincy powers has been awoken, Ichigo is still none the wiser to them. He's completely unaware of them. He does them subconsciously, basically, at this point, or reflexively, as when Yuha went to go, you know, curb stomp into the ground, pulled out his sword, went to go stab Ichigo in the neck, and then, bam, Blut vein saved his ass. Even in that situation, it wasn't really that strong because Yuha said, like, oh, alright, so I see what's going on now. You awoken your Quincy powers. Alright, well, I'll just stab you again, and then this time that ain't gonna work. So, that was like the only time, in fact, I think that is the only time, legitimately, that you can say Ichigo utilized Quincy techniques. Is that one time he subconsciously, reflexively used Blut Vein. And I think another reason why it was Blut Vein that manifested was because Masaki was really adept at using Blut Vein, so that's another carryover. Like, oh, he inherited, like, Getsuga Tensho from his dad, that's why that's the first technique he learned. Maybe he knows more well, I know he knows Getsuga Jujisho, but maybe something else other than Getsuga-based techniques. So he got that from his dad, and then Masaki was most adept at Blut Vein, so that's the thing that he most inherited from his mother. So, yeah, but since then, it's never been brought up until this final fight where, you know, Yuha's kind of psych Ichigo out, being like, I am your father, you are a Quincy! It was utilized kinda sorta when he was fighting the soul, well, he was, you know, trying to fight Yuha the first time when they were in the Chrysalis Palace, and then he's like, oh, my Quincy blood flows in you, and then Ichigo's arm had, like, I don't know, it was kind of ambiguous whether or not that was, like, Yuha invading him with his blood, or if that was Ichigo activating his Blut Vein. I don't think it was Blut Vein, because it was like he was like a puppet being manipulated by Yuha. Yuha was, like, making his blood and Ichigo do its bidding, and then he attacked the Soul King using it. Ichigo has never consciously activated a Quincy technique, and I don't see any reason why he would be able to do that, because his training at the Soul Palace, that was all Shinigami. Shinigami don't know dick about Quincy techniques. So yeah, he trained with the five, basically the gods of the Shinigami, you know, system or theology or whatever, like the 5 members of the Zero Squad. But I don't see any reason why they would have any knowledge of the Quincy techniques. How they would teach him, okay, this is how you use Blut, and this is how you can utilize summon your bow, or, you know, Dragon Reishi or stuff like that. I don't see any reason why Ichigo could do that. And Ichigo's always been shitty at gathering in Reishi anyway. Whenever we was, like, walking through the Garganta, he could never manifest it together, so he clearly doesn't have a talent with this. And we're already nearing I would say we're nearing the end of the arc. I mean, maybe you have different opinions of this, but outside of, like, Masaki's spirit showing up to Ichigo and, like, I'm going to teach you how to use these Quincy techniques now, I don't see any way that he would probably be able to grasp this. Because he needs somebody that is a Quincy that can train him in this art. And the only people that fit the bill and that are still alive, I would say, are Ryukin or Uryu. That's pretty much it. You know, Yuha, I mean, he's not going to teach him anything. Like, maybe like, what I'm talking about is, like, you're in the middle of a fight. You know, unless you seriously think Yuha is going to be like, alright, son, let's just take a break from this fight so I can teach you how to fight like a Quincy, and then we can have a real battle. Okay, Yuha might seriously do that, because he's now a god, essentially, and I don't think he's like, oh no, I can't kill you yet, that would be too boring. But I guess my question for you is, do you think Ichigo is going to utilize any Quincy techniques, and if he does, like, how would he be adept at them? Like, people have been saying, like, oh, well, he has 2 swords now, right? And part of that sword is his Quincy powers. So he'll, like, take both of the swords together, and they'll connect, and it'll make a bow. I'm like, that would be really badass, but how would he learn how to do that? Yeah. Now, another way of looking at it, maybe you're saying, oh, well, you know, maybe Zangetsu's going to be the one to teach Ichigo his Quincy powers, or he already taught Ichigo his Quincy powers. You know, Zangetsu, the black cloaked dude, who's not really named Zangetsu, because Zangetsu is the name of Ichigo's Zanpakuto, and that's Shinigami and Hollow melded together, and Zangetsu even came out and said, I'm not Zangetsu, but I think Ichigo is just like, yeah, just for the sake of making everything simple, and you're both the source of my power, so you're both Zangetsus. So we'll just keep calling him Zangetsu. Now you might be thinking, oh, well, maybe he took time to teach Ichigo some Quincy techniques. I'm like, alright, don't you think there'd be a few times where that would have been immensely important to use in this final battle? You know, and Ichigo never broke out Blut Vein, Blut Artery, never showed any display in his manipulation of Reishi or anything like that. So, you know, if Zangetsu did teach Ichigo some tips and tricks on Quincy powers, we haven't seen him yet. That's not to say we're not going to see him. Ichigo really hasn't been in a serious fight since his training at the Soul Palace, but you'd think he would have displayed those abilities at least once or twice, maybe, just to confirm that, yeah, I do have my Quincy powers and I can still use them. Like, it wouldn't be a mystery. It wouldn't be like, holy shit, Ichigo can use Blut Vein now? We already knew that back when he was fighting against Bach. We already know he has a Quincy. We already know he has Quincy powers. a little confirmation on Kubo's part, like, you know, somebody goes to stab him or shoot him with a bow, and Ichigo's like, oh, blue vein, boom, ha-ha! And he was like, oh, whoa, and he's like, that wouldn't be a shock to us, that'd be like, oh, okay, he learned how to use them, so Zangetsu must have taught him some things, that's pretty cool. But we didn't get any confirmation one way or the other, so if he is going to use Quincy powers, I don't see how that would be any use against Yuha at this point. You know, because Yuha is the god of all Quincy's, so using the powers against him would be useless. So, I guess what this video boils down to is, okay, Ichigo has Quincy powers. Okay, how is that going to be relevant at all in this final battle when the opponent is the god of all Quincy's? Unless Kubo is just like, yeah, he's Quincy, but we're not really gonna focus on that aspect of his character. We're not really gonna have Ichigo use any Quincy techniques. That's not really in my plan. I'm more focused on doing this other thing. You know, I'm not really gonna show Ichigo using Quincy powers all that much. In which case, I think that's kind of a shitty decision on Kubo's part, but I guess that's what you get at this point. So, yeah. Alright, well, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I mean, like, not a lot to really talk about. I mean, I was going to make a separate video. I just want to really talk about the Mugetsu thing and some misconceptions there and just a lead up to his Quincy powers. But like I said, at the end of the day, hasn't really used them. So this is more just like a sheer, like, just a theory video on what might happen in the future, what could potentially occur, or all the cool things that he could probably do with his powers, like the whole sword bow thing that Kubo's probably not going to write in. Anyway, comment below. Thanks for watching. Signing out.